Certainly.
All right, tell me the news yesterday, and here's what I don't understand. This bill came up about the casino in Jackson. What do you know about that bill?
Well, that's one of those bills that originated on the other end of the hall, and
yes, I know
it's the Easter season, and I hadn't figured out yet what eggs and rabbits have to do with it. But that's not an egg we laid. But I couldn't help but think my favorite movie probably in the world is Casablanca, and I think the old line of "I'm shocked to find out gambling is going on in here, sir. Here's your winnings." But my understanding is obviously there's a lot of focus on the city of Jackson. We you talk about it a lot on your show that we want a vibrant city of Jackson. You know it is our largest urban area. To have a strong state, we need a strong Jackson. We have things that we've been able to do lately that I think are helpful to the city of Jackson, the CCID, other things of that nature. We need businesses to want to be in Jackson, not to move out of the downtown area. There are bright spots across the city, and we want to make sure there are more of them. We have a zoo that's not functional. We have award-winning museums that are here, so we have good. We have bad.
With no hotel complex.
That's correct. And
to support that, which is as the same thing as the convention center. You really don't have that infrastructure building in and around it.
That's fair. And of course, if you're talking about the fairgrounds, of course, the fairgrounds are the fairgrounds, and they're in Jackson, Mississippi, where they belong, where we've grown up going. But we've also, as a state, we have bought some of those dilapidated structures around the fairgrounds area. And so I expect the legislature is committed to continue to make that area better. I mean, it would be a sad and a disgraceful thing if we ended up with just the Capitol sitting up on top of that hill and nothing around it. We don't believe that. I don't believe that that's good. I want the fairgrounds to be vibrant. I want some improvements there. We've done a lot over the last few years, and credit to those that have been involved with that. But I do think that, in this situation, apparently the buzz was it kind of caught everybody off guard that there was a casino idea that was out there for the city of Jackson. They may have got the cart ahead of the horse a little bit.
Well, it was dramatic, number one, because you'd have to change the laws as far as the offshore thing or the water deal altogether, even if you're going to put it on a little bayou or slough that ran through.
Sure.
So that was going to be a big change as far as. And the other part of this also was that you had a lot of people who saw this and said, "Wait a minute, what is this going to do to the other casinos?" Certainly, as far as Vicksburg is concerned, it would almost kill the Vicksburg market.
I think it would be very detrimental to the Vicksburg market. I mean, I think that everybody looks at whatever impact if you bring in a business, whether it's a casino or whether it's some other type of business. It's kind of interesting. The certificate of need issue pops up all the time because if you had to go ask the casinos, do we need another casino? I bet they say no. Kind of like
well, there's a couple in the works that they're talking about on the coast. And even that Tullis Hotel that we were talking about, that mega project down there, there's a story out there this morning they were going to put that on hold until this rumor even died out because they weren't even going to make that. So those type of bills, and even just the projections or talking about them, do have consequences.
They do, and to my knowledge, like I said, I don't think there's a companion bill on our end. Yesterday was a deadline for revenue bills and appropriation bills, anything that kind of touch money to try to be brought up, I believe, in committee. I believe that was the proper deadline, and that may be why this bill came at the point that it did, if it has that aspect.
All right, help me on the process again, and Daniel Sparks, Senator Sparks is my guest. Was that bill just written and put into the hopper, or was it something? Because I thought that deadline to do that was passed, or was it attached to another bill?
Revenue and appropriation bills have a later deadline, so
new ones can be issued any time for the deadline.
I think last Friday. I had dropped a bill that went to the Finance Committee, was trying to get the language right on the bill. So because it was a revenue or an appropriation bill, I could drop it later. but then you have a deadline to get those bills out of committee. So I think that, and I don't know when that bill dropped. I apologize. I can look on the legislative history, but I do think it came quickly.
I don't think anybody disagrees with you that we need to think out of the box and do something to the capital city. I was looking at the Nashville growth, and kind of it all started. I shouldn't say it all started, but the Grand Ole Opry was a big part of that. There's nothing to say that we didn't have a building of that type of magnitude in the city of Jackson for the music, for the blues, for gospel music and things such as that. It's almost a new ground zero in the capital city. What 20 or 30 years from now that could be in the same type of venue for recording artists and everybody else. That said, you've got to have leaders who are willing to work with you.
You do, and of course, we have Thalia Hall that hosts not only the International Ballet Competition, which is a really big deal that a lot of people worked for many decades and many years to keep here in Jackson and to have in Jackson. So again, we have spots that people are doing things well, but yes, you got to have partnership, and I do think a key part of the legislature's activities over the last couple of years have been issues with the CCID. It has been things that we have tried to do that addresses downtown Jackson because that is a municipality, and that municipality is governed by mayors and boards of aldermen or councilmen, and we want to work together. I've seen some things that are encouraging, but I do think Jackson's in better shape than when I came to the legislature 5 years ago. Good, bad, or indifferent, just my interaction. We have some amazing restaurants in the city of Jackson. We have, like I said, we have the museums. We have music venues. I mean, there's a little jewel down there on State Street with Martin's. They remodel. When I first walked in, a lot of people said, "Where are you going to lunch?" I said, "Martin's." And I'm not trying to do a commercial for them. I'm just stating a fact. They turn over plate lunches there like none other in this area. They have a music venue ability. They just had, along with the old kind of Howlin' Mouse across the street. They had the huge part of the St. Patty's Day parade. So there are people who are putting their money, their time, their efforts on the line to have something successful in Jackson.
So what do you normally order when you go there?
Man, I tell you what I want, what I order. Their pork chops are amazing, but I usually try to get the club sandwich because it's a little healthier. But I'll tell you, they got
but you sneak in the pork chops.
Without question, without question.
No fried chicken?
Oh, they have fried chicken on Friday. So I guess this is going to turn into a commercial, and it's good.
So fried chicken on Fridays.
That's right.
So there you go. Now, the other thing that, while we're talking about this, the other thing is the one lake or two lake project. When you look at that, we've been talking about that for years and years and years. It has the possibility, if everybody could get together on that thing, to turn it into a San Antonio. As far as the riverfront, new buildings on there, new places to shop, et cetera, but nobody can get together or anything. It's just like the zoo itself. Keep it there and continue a slow death when they had a chance to move it in the middle of an area that would have been absolutely incredible with all of the other venues and attractions, from the Children's Museum to the Natural Science Museum to the Ag Museum, go on and on and on. Just a wonderful opportunity that was missed because of politics. We'll talk more. Senator Daniel Sparks, who's District 5, Etowah, Prentiss, and Tishomingo counties. All right, help me out on this one, and you may or may not know anything about this one. I'm sure you do. The energy bill, when we had I think it was on Monday, we talked about the horrendous things going on in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Just absolutely incredible as far as their public utility. Talking about it's almost like the Biden administration is running it. An act to authorize the commission to cancel a municipality's certificate to provide service greater than 1 mile outside its corporate boundaries upon the finding that the municipality did not provide reasonable, adequate service. Do you know anything about this bill, and does that address this?
Yes, it does, and Senator Neil Whaley, of course, represents that area, and he's been very engaged, and I think maybe the lead author on that bill. We go back to something similar to what we were talking about in the first segment. You have a municipality. They have certain, rights, privileges, operations move through their board, their elected mayors and aldermen. But there comes a point when utilities fail, and we've gone through that here with the water situation in Jackson. And of course, we have, a federal master, if you will, over that, or that is, trying to get that system better. Well, in the Holly Springs area, as I understand it, there have been tremendous outages for lengthy periods of time, greater than what one would anticipate across any system. That's mostly up there in the TVA market, where we have cooperatives that kind of provide our power like they do in Tishomingo, Etowah, Prentiss counties. And particularly during one of the storms, tons of damage, lots of damage. And again, if you're not doing your maintenance, if you're not out there working, cutting those limbs back, when you have an ice storm, you're going to have a problem like that. And as I understand it, and again, not being local on the ground, but as I understand it, the overtures to the governing authority have just been met with resistance. And the other issue is their certificated area is bigger than the footprint of the city limits. So you are actually serving people outside, or failing to serve people who are outside the city limits, which means these people don't get to vote for you. So I'm stuck with
80% of them.
And that's and then I can't help but kind of factor into the equation that with the economic development project that landed up there in that general area, that's not a good look for industry and business. If you wanted to recruit them into the system that were provided services by that particular utility. So I think it's a necessary step when you get to the point that they are, and I hope it works its way through the system, because, again, the state doesn't want to take over anything. It's kind of like failing schools. We don't want to take over anything, but we owe a duty to the citizenry that we function in a manner that is at least
Let me ask you this. If 80% of the service area is in the county, and of course they can't vote on bad leadership, and you just touched on something, maybe that's why they've been without a GM for over a year, no general manager to give leadership, simply because of the mayor and the board of council, whoever it is there. That seems to be a possibility. But could it go over to TVA, the partner there, and let them run it?
Well, I think that, again, that would be more of a decision for that local delegation. But if a cooperative was willing to take that into their territory, I think that's probably the easiest fix. Now, you still have probably agreements as far as running our power on your transmission lines, because those lines wouldn't belong to that cooperative.
Who's the ultimate authority on that? I mean, if you take it over, it would have to be a legislative mandate to do that, right? I
think you'd have to have legislation. Of course, the PSC would be very involved, because you do have a municipality. It is a regulated utility. It's not the
but they say the PSC says they can't do anything about that. They don't have the authority to do it right.
No, I don't think they have the authority to do it. What needs to be done, yes, the legislature has to act, but I will give the PSC credit. They have been engaged in this conversation, as I understand it. Of course, we have a new PSC in the northern section, but they have worked.
Yeah, and Chris was the one who brought this to light, because it's been happening for a long time, and under Brandon Presley, we knew nothing about this. And the other part of that is this. I got a couple of notes on personal email that this is also happening in places like Okolona.
Well, we've certainly not seen what we've seen in the Holly Springs area and other places in the state. And I'm not, all those areas are outside of Senate District 5, but I am familiar with the Holly Springs issue, and this was going on before, the new PSC election, because Senator Whaley's been addressing this, as has, I think, Representative Kincaid and others up in that area for the last at least 2.5 years.
You had quite a few bills in workforce development, and some of those are still alive. Any that you want to mention that, let's see, reverse auction requirements for procurement, exempt certain training equipment is one. No, that one died in committee. Oh, I see. Also, you had a Kratom Consumer Protection Act that died in committee. Well, is there any one still alive as far as Kratom is concerned?
I think so. On the House end, I don't think any bill came out of drug policy. I'm actually on that committee, and we were just trying to figure out how to address this. It's a big concern, I think, of all of us. What is available on the shelf at particularly convenience stores that we go in and buy, and people they don't know what's in it, but they seem to enjoy the effect that it has. But as far as the workforce side of the equation, I'll brag on my counterpart down in the House, Donnie Bell, who has been the longtime workforce director. He was given an award this week. A lot of the work that he has done over the last few years. Senator David Parker preceded me in this committee, putting together MFLEX, putting together a lot of the different programs with Accelerate and the career coaches, and what they've done has set us up for success. Now, what we're trying to do, I believe, is find the right data to measure the impact of what we're doing, because we're spending state dollars on it. I think there's a lot in that realm. Of course, with the two big projects that were announced earlier this year, we want to make sure that we have the tools available to accelerate, because there's customizable training for both of those projects that are going to be done in conjunction probably with our community colleges. There's legislation out there dealing with our community colleges and how we do career and technical education. It's always at the forefront. So I think that there's definitely been a shift in the mentality toward career and technical education, careers, and entrepreneurialism, and I think that's good for us. I think it's good across the board.
Is there a bill out there, yours, anybody else's, that has to do with reconstituting boards, like the lottery board, the parole board, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, there is a bill. It's Senate Bill 2799. Just so happens to be my bill. Thank you. If that wasn't a plug, you did a really good job. I'm going to say
27 what?
2799. We reconstitute. I think there's 163 sections in the bill. It's 500 plus pages. What we are trying to do is give clarity to who is up for appointment, when they're appointed, from what geographic region. That bill would go into effect in its primary purposes in 2028, and the reason for that is, of course, the current governor and other appointing authorities have appointed people. People are up for advice and consent, but what this bill would do is, in the future, for the next governor, we task the Secretary of State with providing a list of people who are up for appointment, and we would make it be the majority of that board. So if you have a 5-member board, 3 people would be up in that first year of a new governor's term, and that they would be appointed. We're going to use geographic restrictions of the Supreme Court districts, because all these agencies, boards, and commissions have been created over the last 50, 60 years or more. And
that hasn't been changed since when?
Well, a lot of them, have different configurations because they started at a different time. Some are the old congressional districts. Some are, tied to something else. So what we're doing is continuity. You would do half the board, being the majority, in year 1, and you do the other half of the board in year 3. We didn't change any of the criteria of who would be on the agency board.
Qualifications changed?
That's correct. No, we did not. We left that alone, and it's because it's such a big bill and it touches so many different agencies. I've had some conversation about it, and we're trying to get it right. Of course, again, it doesn't go into effect till the next administration, but it would avoid a lot of these holdover appointments or empty seats or boards that somebody's not showing up for the board meeting. So I believe it's a good government bill, but it is a bill that simply allows us to do a better job as a Senate with our duty to advise and consent, and whether it's agencies, boards, directors, or their executive directors.
Chairwoman Becky Curry was on with me yesterday from Corrections and said that recidivism in our system is 77%. 77% of the people who let out or go back in jail. And everybody's stretching to see what can we do, how can we do it, how can we improve these numbers. And I think everybody has basically the same answer to give a little bit more support, but how do you do that? It hasn't been successful. I'll let you speak to that when we come back in the final segment with Senator Daniel Sparks right after this. Green Light. You grew up in Cleveland. Was Bob still there when you were there?
Ooh, I was born in Cleveland. I didn't get to grow up there. I grew up pretty much in Belmont, but yes, I was born in Cleveland.
You left early then.
Well, my dad preached, and so we had a chance to move home, and he took advantage of that.
All right, one quick, before we get to the recidivism question, C-SPAR text line, does 2799 include IHL on reconstituting the boards?
As far, and I'll double check on that. I don't believe it includes IHL and the Board of Education because they have a constitutional mandate. So we touched the majority of boards that we could touch with without offending the Constitution, because we would have to do that a different way.
I got you. There are a lot of different things as far as, and we don't have a lot of times, but just a concise bullet points on some of the things we were talking about. Reducing recidivism,
yes.
Remaining bills that will have an impact.
All right, I'm going to jump. I will roll through that first one, and then I had one point I do want to make about the illustrious Steve Holland you had on the other day. The recidivism, it depends on where you measure it. A lot of people measure it 1 year, 3 year, et cetera. It goes back to training. It goes back to alcohol and drug treatment. It goes back to what we can do once someone comes into the custody of the Department of Corrections. And as a workforce chairman now, I have a focus on that, working with Chairman Barnett on our side, Chairman Curry on the other side. That's a huge focus of mine because I believe if someone has a skilled opportunity to go make money, it's not just people coming out of high school, it's people coming out of the prison system, and that would greatly impact positively our workforce participation rate.
Was that it?
That's
well, you left too much time to talk about Steve Holland.
Oh, no, trust me. I was listening the other day, and I'm going to talk about PERS. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it's because they don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. You ask Steve Holland a question directly, and I'm going to answer the question he wouldn't answer. Number one, I'm not going to stoke fear. My mother's a PERS retiree. If you're listening to this and you're a PERS retiree, your check's coming. Your check's not changing. The COLA's not changing. I'm going to go ahead and say that up front. That's a commitment. I told somebody the other day, this is the most simple contract. If you do X, I'll do Y. If you've done X and you're retired, the state has an obligation to do Y, period. End of story. Now, somebody that's in the system, if you've got your years in to retire, because I had these phone calls, don't retire and go take your money and run. I asked Chairman Chris Johnson had a hearing last week on Wednesday. We spent 2 hours talking with at least 3 of the PERS board members, one of whom has 31 years in the system. I asked him, I said, if you thought the system was in doubt, you would take your money and go home, wouldn't you? He said, yes, I would. So you folks that need to stay working for the state of Mississippi, keep that insurance and keep everything that you want till you're 65, you do it with confidence that this system is sound. But you ask Steve, former Representative Holland, what's the unfunded liability and how's it calculated and what does it mean? That is an actuarial assumed unfunded liability. That number is $25.1 billion with a B. That number is basically constituted from the actions of the 1999 legislature, and I loved how Representative Holland wanted to shake that off. That's his legislature. He was there. They voted, and in my opinion, very politically, voted benefits that had not been earned. They made it a 3% compounded COLA against the advice of the PERS board, who said make it simple. They made it go back in time, retroactive, which the PERS board did not recommend. That legislature did that, and you got to remember who was in the governor's mansion. It was the first Republican since Reconstruction, Kirk Fordyce, and we were going toward a 2000 election. So you can make any assumptions you want to, but that's what they did. That's $4 billion of our unfunded liability. The PERS board in the last 8 years or so has dialed the anticipated rate of return at the advice of their experts down from 8 to 7. Now, if I'm an expert and I'm managing your money and I can talk you into lowering the assumed rate of return from 8 to 7, I think I've done myself a favor. I've eliminated any risk on my part. Their 15-year rate of return is 9.78. I believe Representative Holland said it's been 9% since 1952. But we chose to dial it from 8 to 7, not we, the PERS board. That's $8 billion, Paul. $8 billion of that unfunded liability. And that's paper. They didn't lose that money. That's on paper. The rest of it is the shrinkage of government. I take responsibility, even though I wasn't in the legislature. I believe in a smaller government. So we will make this work. We will find a way to get it done. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to listen to the people that the PERS board is paying $100 million to, who can annually, that's what they make, money managers, people on Wall Street, whatever it may be, to convince them to turn the dial from 8 to 7 that in such a manner that it shocked the system. The PERS unfunded liability is driven up $8 billion by that decision, which drove our funded percentage below 60. Those things happen on paper. The PERS system is strong.
It's a little like Social Security. When you open the dialogue to say we need to do something in the future that's not going to affect you, but in the future that it's not going to affect you kind of disappears. I remember a conversation that I had many, many years ago with Steve, and I wanted to bring up the slurp. And
that was part of 99 too. Yeah, that was that 99 legislature. Yes, sir.
And he basically told me, I think I remember this, that it was mathematically impossible to get rid of that. And I thought, well, why are you guys handling anything in the House or Senate if it's mathematically impossible to do anything? But he, excuse the words, he kind of buried that conversation.
Yeah, it's baked in the cake now. We've got to make sure we take care of the citizenry of Mississippi.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Daniel Sparks. Mike.